Hi, I'm Mike with TechWithMike.com. You ever wonder how to find out what your IP address is on your computer? Or what is an IP address? We're here today to let you know. Before we go over how to find out what your IP address is, let's go over what it is. According to Wikipedia, an Internet Protocol address or IP address is a numerical label assigned to each device connected to a computer network that uses the Internet Protocol for communications. Now, the Internet Protocol software that allows you to talk to computers all over the internet, just like your web surfing. To continue with the definition, an IP address serves two main functions: host or network interface identification and location addressing. An IP address is numbers separated by dots. For example, like the 192.168.1.1 address on this slide. In regards to network interface identification and location addressing in the definition, think of an IP address like a street address. An IP address is your address or your location on the internet, just like your street has a street address for the location in the world. Every computer on the internet that communicates to the internet has an IP address. Okay, I'm going to go over how to find your IP address on three different operating systems. We have Windows 10, we have Mac OS, and we have Linux. So let's start off with Windows. How do you find your address or your IP address? Well, there's a couple different ways you can do this on Windows 10 and previous versions of Windows. You can go down here to the Network Internet Access section. You right click on it and go to Open Network Internet Settings. Then you would click on Ethernet. We'll click on the network in question and you scroll down. It tells you your IPv4 address is 192.168.3.113. Now that's your internal address. And we'll talk about external IP addresses in a second, but your internal address is what connects to your router and sends your requests out to the internet. And now your router has a different IP address, and we'll go over that in a second. That's first way of getting your IP address on Windows 10. The second way, which I prefer, it's a lot easier for me, go down to search and type in CMD, that's Charlie Mary David, and you get your command prompt, open that up. Now, you would type in IPCONFIG, so it's ipconfig. Hit enter, and here, your IPv4 address is this 192.168.3.113. Now, that's my IP address on my network. Your address on your network will be different. That's how you find your IP address for Windows 10 on your local network. Okay, now let's find out the IP address on a Mac OS system. There's a few ways you can do this. To do this, you would open up your system preferences, click on the Apple and go to System Preferences. In System Preferences, you would select Network. And then in here, you'll have your top one, which is your Ethernet. Now I have this Mac hooked up with wireless and Ethernet, but you're going to be using the one at the top of the list here. So here is my IP address. Now I'm going to move this over a little bit, and I'm going to show you another way you can get your IP address. If you open up the terminal window. In the terminal window, you can do it a couple different ways. You can type in ifconfig grep inet. So what this is going to do is it's going to search your interface configuration, and the grep is another way to search the output before it comes out. So you hit enter here, and your address is right here, 237. But you notice you have two inet addresses. This one is for the Ethernet address, as you can see here, and then the Wi-Fi address is 236. So you have two. You might not have two. You might just have wireless or whatever. But yeah, that's how you find that address. Now, another way you can do this in terminal, type in ipconfig like we did in Windows. Get interface address EN0. And there it is. Now, if you wanted to get it for the other interface, for the wireless, you would do EN1. Some things may differ on your Mac, but this is how I do it on mine, and this will help you determine what your IP address is later on. The easiest way to do it is through here, but I prefer terminal-based information. And that is how you find your IP address on a Mac operating system. Okay, so how do you find your IP address on a Linux operating system? For this example, I'm going to be using Linux Mint. Linux Mint is a very easy and well-known distribution of Linux, and I believe it's based on Ubuntu. In Linux Mint, you would go down to the bottom right in your system tray, and you would left-click on it and go to Network Settings. And here, wired is the only connection we have for this machine. And right there, it tells you your address, 192.168.3.150. So I'm just going to drag this over here. And we have another cool way, my preferred way of finding out what the IP address, even though it's a little bit longer, is in the terminal. So you open up terminal. And here, all you would type in, there's a couple different ways you can do it. It's 3 different ways, actually. You can type in hostname -i, and that gives you your IP address. You can type in if config, and I believe you can do grep, pipe grep inet, and there's your IP address right here. The third way you can do it is if you typed in IP space address. And you could have also said IP address space grep inet, and it would just show you the inet connections. So that's how you find your IP address in Linux Mint. Again, other Linux distributions may differ a little, but you should have enough information here to be able to find out what your IP address is on other distributions. Okay, so for this video, we've so far been talking about your internal IP address on your local network. But remember what I said, every computer on the internet has an IP address. So when you're connecting to a web server, your web browser, like I'm connected to google.com right now, it's going to an IP address. Now Google has many IP addresses, but it always needs to go to another IP address on the internet in order to communicate on the internet. Now, the internal IP addresses like we've been seeing, like the 192.168, those aren't internet addresses on the internet. That's your local network connection, but it's still an internet protocol address. Without that internet protocol address, you wouldn't be able to communicate on the internet. But what happens is when it goes out your router, the other computers that are getting the connections know what IP address is coming from. And it's not the 192 address, it's a completely different address, which is provided by your internet provider. So I wanted to go over how you can find out what your actual internet address is. And how to do that is, there are tons of sites out there that allow you to do it. What is my IP address? And it tells you right here, your public IP address is this. So that's what other web servers know where the information is going back to. But there are other ways to do this. If you're a fan of the command line, like me, you could do it this way. Using what they call curl, and curl is just something that queries web pages on the internet in a text-based form. But using curl, you could go to, you can say curl ifconfig -me. So there must be a website out there called ifconfig.me. And it gives you your IP address. You could go to ipecho.net/plain, and it gives you your IP address. There are lots of different websites out there. one website I like to go to, and I don't know why I prefer this. It's not that easy to type. It's ipchicken.com. And it's more of a pretty interface where it tells you your IP address, right?